Day 5. Understanding the fear of failure. Few forces influence human behavior more than the fear of failure. Although it rarely announces itself directly, its presence can be found in countless decisions people make every day. It appears when someone delays pursuing a goal that matters deeply to them. It appears when opportunities are ignored, when ambitions are quietly lowered, and when dreams remain permanently postponed for a future that never seems to arrive. What makes the fear of failure particularly difficult to recognize is that it often disguises itself as something else. Sometimes it appears as procrastination. Sometimes it appears as perfectionism. Sometimes it appears as excessive planning, endless preparation, or a belief that more information is needed before taking action. On the surface, these behaviors can seem rational. After all, who would argue against being prepared? Who would criticize someone for wanting to do things properly? Yet there is an important difference between preparation and avoidance. Preparation moves you closer to action. Avoidance keeps action safely in the future. Many people spend years standing at the edge of opportunities they never fully pursue because the possibility of failure feels too uncomfortable to face. The irony is that the fear of failure often creates the very outcome it is trying to prevent. Consider a person who wants to start a business. They spend months researching, watching videos, reading books, and refining their ideas. While learning is valuable, there comes a point where additional preparation provides diminishing returns. The next step requires action. Yet action introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty creates the possibility of failure. To avoid that discomfort, they continue preparing. Months become years. The business never begins. The failure they feared is avoided in the short term, but the opportunity is lost nonetheless. The same pattern appears in relationships, careers, finances, health, and personal growth. The desire to avoid failure often prevents people from taking the actions that could lead to success. One of the reasons failure feels so threatening is that many of us learn to interpret it incorrectly. From an early age, mistakes are often treated as evidence that something is wrong. Poor grades, unsuccessful attempts, and visible errors can attract criticism or embarrassment. Over time, we begin associating failure with personal inadequacy rather than with learning. As adults, that association frequently remains. A failed project becomes proof that we are not capable. A rejection becomes proof that we are not good enough. A setback becomes proof that success is meant for other people. Yet when we examine the lives of successful individuals in any field, a different picture emerges. Behind almost every meaningful achievement lies a history of mistakes, setbacks, wrong decisions, and periods of uncertainty. What separates successful people from unsuccessful people is rarely the absence of failure. More often, it is the way failure is interpreted. Some people see failure as a verdict. Others see it as information. This distinction changes everything. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle as a child. Falling off the bicycle was not viewed as evidence that you should never ride again. It was understood as part of the learning process. Each mistake provided information about balance, coordination, and control. No one expected mastery on the first attempt. Yet in many areas of adult life, people expect immediate competence. They become discouraged by mistakes that would be considered completely normal during any learning process. This expectation creates unnecessary pressure. It encourages people to judge themselves too quickly and abandon goals before they have given themselves enough time to improve. The reality is that growth and failure are closely connected. Every new skill involves a period of incompetence. Every meaningful challenge involves uncertainty. every ambitious goal requires entering territory where success is not guaranteed. There is no way to separate achievement from the possibility of failure. The two travel together. Once this becomes clear, an important question emerges. If failure is unavoidable, why do some people continue moving forward while others remain stuck? The answer often lies in how they define themselves. People who fear failure intensely tend to connect outcomes to identity. If they succeed, they feel valuable. If they fail, they feel inadequate. Because their self-worth becomes dependent on results, failure carries emotional consequences far beyond the event itself. In contrast, people who maintain a healthier perspective understand that outcomes provide feedback rather than definitions. A failed attempt does not mean they are failures. A mistake does not mean they are incompetent. A setback does not determine their future. They view experiences as events rather than identities. This perspective creates resilience because it allows them to learn without feeling personally diminished by every obstacle they encounter. Another important truth about failure is that it is rarely as catastrophic as the imagination suggests. The human mind has a tendency to exaggerate negative outcomes. Before taking action, people often envision worst-case scenarios in vivid detail. They imagine embarrassment, criticism, financial loss, disappointment, or rejection. These imagined consequences can feel so real that they discourage action altogether. Yet when failure actually occurs, the experience is often far less devastating than expected. People adapt, they learn, they recover, and most importantly, they gain knowledge that would have been impossible to acquire through observation alone. Many of life's greatest lessons are available only through experience. No amount of reading about confidence can replace the confidence gained through action. No amount of preparation can fully substitute for real-world experience. At some point, growth requires participation. This is why courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to act despite fear. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has experienced uncertainty. They have questioned themselves. They have worried about outcomes. They have encountered obstacles that made success appear unlikely. What allowed them to continue was not certainty. It was commitment. They decided that the possibility of growth was more important than the possibility of failure. As you move forward in your own journey, remember that failure is not the opposite of success. More often, it is part of the path toward it. Every lesson learned, every mistake corrected, and every challenge overcome contributes to the person you are becoming. The goal is not to eliminate failure from your life. The goal is to change your relationship with it. When failure is viewed as a teacher rather than an enemy, it loses much of its power. And when that happens, opportunities that once felt intimidating begin to look possible. Reflection. Questions. 1. What goal have you avoided because you were afraid of failing? 2. How do you typically react when things do not go according to plan? 3. Do you tend to view failure as an event or as a reflection of your identity? 4. What valuable lessons have you learned from past setbacks? 5. How might your life change if you were less afraid of making mistakes? Daily action step. Identify one action you have been postponing because of fear, uncertainty, or the possibility of failure. Commit to taking the first step today, no matter how small it may seem. Focus on progress rather than perfection, and remind yourself that action creates learning, while avoidance creates stagnation. Success affirmation. I am willing to learn, grow, and take action despite uncertainty. Failure does not define me, it teaches me. Every experience brings me closer to the person I am becoming.